Welcome to Rinkside Rundown, the podcast that puts you right in the heart of women's hockey. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and each week I'm on a mission to showcase the incredible women who are lighting up the ice across the globe. Get ready as I chat with rising stars, seasoned pros, and all the game changers making waves in the world of women's hockey that you won't find anywhere else. So, let's dive into the exciting world of women's hockey and make sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Hello and welcome back to Rinkside Rundown. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and today we have a very special episode. Before we dive into the incredible conversation ahead, I wanted to share that I'll be joined by the very first ever co-host in Rinkside Rundown history. On this week's episode, we're joined not only by our upcoming guest, but also by Preston Huntington, who is the brains behind the incredible Czech women's hockey report on Instagram, providing an in-depth coverage of the amazing women's hockey players from Czechia. Preston, excited to have you alongside as a co-host today. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Chris, it's great to be here. I'm honored to be your first co-host. So thank you so much for having me. Yes, am the brainchild behind this Czech women's hockey report. I think it's probably appropriate for me to give a quick introduction, if that's okay with you, as to who I am and where I come from and why some random guy in Washington D.C. is following Czech women's hockey. So, but my story is very simple, at least I think it is. About around 2016, I was in grad school at Norwich University in Vermont, which is not too far from where our guest goes to school in Dartmouth. And I co-founded a women's club hockey team while I was there. And this experience completely ignited my enthusiasm for women's hockey. After graduation, I moved to the Washington, D.C. area. I got more involved in coaching. I'm now a director of goaltending development at my local program. And I had the privilege of actually launching some of the inaugural girls teams that we have at our program. And I've really gotten super involved with just this whole concept of trying to bring women's hockey more to the forefront. And so I think a lot of people ask, okay, well, that's great, but where does the Czech Republic fit into all this? Because I definitely don't sound Czech. And to be quite candid, I am not Czech myself. I have no Czech bloodline in me whatsoever. But in high school, I randomly chose the Czech Republic for a geography project when I was in 10th grade. And I instantly fell in love with the country. And for the past 17 years of my life, I've really immersed myself in Czech culture and history. I dedicated a lot of my academic life to the Czech Republic. And so naturally, those two passions combined, I've become a huge Czech hockey fan. And earlier this year, in April, me, my wife, my best friend, Dan, we went to Utica, New York, and we got a chance to see the Women's World's Championships. And it was a phenomenal experience. And we got a chance to see the Czech women's hockey team in person for the very first time. And it was a life-changing experience. And leaving that tournament, it really got me thinking, how can I merge these two passions for the game, my years of coaching and playing, and how can I contribute to growing the women's side? I think that's where this project was really born. Our vision and the Czech Women's Hockey Report's vision is that, there's so much talent around the world. And I think a lot of times, that talent is hidden behind language or cultural barriers. And we just want to celebrate their talent and celebrate the contributions that athletes like our guests today are making to the sport that may not get the coverage that they deserve here in North America. So, that's my story. Happy to be here.
Well, that's a fantastic story, and we're going to talk about it a number of times, but make sure go onto Instagram, follow Czech Women's Hockey Report. It is an incredibly I can't succinctly say just how important what you're doing is for women's hockey in general, but also women's hockey in Czechia. There's so many incredible players from there, and there's so many incredible players that people may not have known come from Czechia, and we're starting to see that now with the PWHL, but we're also seeing that in the NCAA. And let's shift gears. That's a perfect segue into our guest today, which we are incredibly excited to introduce. Without further ado, our guest today is Michaela Hesová, a goalie with Dartmouth College in the NCAA. Michaela, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. Just having a nice Wednesday, Excited for this.
Nice, fantastic. Yeah, nice Wednesday evening. This is a fantastic time to just get together, talk about your own career. And when we talk about your career, we have to start where it all began. So, your origin story. What is your origin story? How'd you get into hockey, and what was it specifically about goaltending that you kind of gravitated towards?
So my story is kind of similar to a lot of girls in Czech Republic, I gotta say. I have two older brothers, and both of them used to play hockey. And when I was growing up, my mom was the one who would always drive my brother to practice, and my dad would be working, so my mom had to take me. So ever since I was in a stroller, I was at a hockey rink. Then I grew up. I was like 2, 3 years old. I started picking up what's going on around me, and I was at a ring, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool. I want to play this. I want to be just like my brother." And my dad was like, "Absolutely not. Like, you're gonna go play tennis. You're gonna go play golf. Something a little more girl-like, as people like to say." And I was so persistent. And then my mom, actually, she's a real one. She was the one who took me to my first skates. She was the one who took me to my practices for most of the time until like third grade, when my dad is like, "Okay, yeah, I guess you're pretty good at hockey. I guess I can see you doing it in the future." And so I joined a club in Prague called Sparta Praha, where I played until I want to say it was like U15 boys hockey. And yeah, that's essentially where it started.
And so, let's talk a little bit about before we get into your careers more specifically. If we could talk, you've mentioned your family a few times now. One of the questions that I always like to start off with in these conversations is, it really does take a village, right? Like it isn't just, I love hockey, I'm just going to do hockey. It's
Yeah.
always like there's a lot more that goes into that. And often family, they're driving to and from the rink. There's also, truthfully, there's also the financial aspect of things, and especially as a goaltender,
Yeah.
that's not an inexpensive position to play. Maybe could you talk a little bit about what it's meant to you to have that family support, especially now as you've continued your career, in the NCAA, and what it's meant to have your family there to be able to support you throughout this entire experience?
So with Thanksgiving coming up, I'm extremely thankful for the support my not only my parents but my entire family has given me growing up. I don't even know if I could count how many times my mom has driven to the ring before 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. just having to get up, drop me off at a ring, pick me up, and then go to work, which I think is crazy. I look back on it now that I'm a little older, and I'm like, this woman, I don't know how she did that. But then obviously you have the financial aspect, especially as a goalie. It's incredibly tough, but I'm very, very grateful and very thankful for the fact that my family had the resources to support my dream, and they still support my dream. They're my number one fans. My grandma watches every single game. Like, my family couldn't be bigger fans of me than they are right now.
How cool is it though, as well, to have, like, especially, this started out as a dream, and you've been able to continue your career now into the NCAA with, like, obviously aspirations to continue progressing forward. Um, Also, what is it like just to have, like, to your family, like, is sitting there, that they're watching these games, that they're enthusiastic, that that they care and they're invested so much. Like, talk about what that feels like for you as you hit the ice, you have another start. It isn't just another start. This is another opportunity for you to be able to play the sport you love in front of friends and family.
Yeah, it's incredible. Every time before I hit the ice, especially in the NCAA, because this has been my lifelong dream, as you mentioned, I always like tell myself when I need to calm myself down. I'm like, there's so many people that are proud of you. There's so many people that are looking at you, and no matter how you do, they'll still love you. They'll still send you the message that you played great. Doesn't matter. Like I have a lot of people in my corner, especially my family, and it just feels extremely fulfilling because I get to do what I love, and I have people that love me, that watch me, and support me. So I'm extremely lucky.
Oh, I love that. Preston, I'm going to throw it to you now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fantastic. And as a goalie myself, I get it. You know, the early mornings, the constant financial stress that can come with it, and there's a lot of uncertainty, so much pressure. I want to pull the thread a little bit, Michaela, if I can. So you're from the greater Prague region, right? You grew up in, I believe it's Povorčovice. I hope I said that right. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you expand a little bit about what the women's hockey landscape is like in Prague as you're coming up as a youth player? You know, how did you get involved with the Sparta Praha club? And then how did that become what would eventually become your transition to the United States and coming to Bishop Kearney? Like, what was that whole journey like? What was that path like?
So it's crazy you're saying that. You might think that like in Prague, since it's the capital city, it's one of the best. They have some of the best hockey teams. When I was growing up, I had never seen any other girls in youth hockey. So for me, it was also like mostly boys sport. I was like the only one until probably like fifth grade when I started to like see other girls on other teams, and I'm like, oh, there is women's hockey in Czech, even though I didn't get to see it because I was so young. And when you're young, you're blunt to little things. Like I didn't probably even know there was a national team at that point. But those little steps that like looking back on it, those little steps like going to Sparta Praha were just steps that built me up in my career that I didn't realize I was making. I just went there because it was the closest team. My brother played on it at the time. So it was easier for like the driving situation for my mom. And so these little steps just like stacked up, especially in Sparta Praha. They have incredible developmental program, incredible coaches, especially goalie coaches. And they helped build me up, and then they also supported sending me on my way to US.
So was there a specific like coach, or was there an interaction that you had? Was there a recruitment type event that gave you the opportunity to come over to North America? Like I imagine that decision, when you're talking about it with your family, that's a pretty big decision, right? Like you're a young girl, you want to pursue this dream of playing hockey long term, and now all of a sudden you're telling your family, hey, I want to move across the Atlantic, go to the United States. um I mean, I imagine that was pretty tough.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially at 50 years old, it was definitely tough. But my journey to like get to North America kind of started when I was around, I want to say in fifth grade, because one of my dad's best friends used to work for Legacy Global Sports, which was a big organization that organized both men's and women, like girls and boys tournaments. And they had a tournament in Toronto called Hockey Hall of Fame tournament something. It was like my first big interaction with North American hockey, and it was all girls America, Canada, and then me. And it turned out to be me, the only goalie on the team, and we ended up winning that tournament. And then a year later, the same organization does World Selects Internationals. There are tournaments like all around Europe. I think they're still going on right now. And the assistant coach, not head coach, the assistant coach on my team was Brent Hill, who is now at Quinnipiac, but he used to be a head coach at Selects. So he kind of like gave me the idea of Selects, and he's like, hey, maybe if you keep working, maybe we can take you in like a couple of years. And that's when the dream kind of started. And then I realized that it's attainable. And then I just went my sophomore year.
So what were when you reflect back on, especially that, and we're gonna get there's so much to talk about your career, and can't wait to dive in more into that. But I also want to know, when you think about, or when you reflect back to those first few memories that you have of making that transition from, Czechia, over to the US, and obviously, as you mentioned, in Toronto as well. But what were some of your first impressions how comfortable were you? Like, how comfortable did you become early on in that process? Because that's, some of us move like up in Canada, a province away, or in the States, a state away. But like, move it, that's a huge move. That can't be easy at that young age. What were some of your first impressions? What were some of your first thoughts as you had made that transition?
So even before I went to selects and I was just on these tournaments that lasted about a week, I saw how extremely driven all of the girls were, and that was something new to me because when you play with boys and when they're younger, they're kind of reckless. They don't really know what they want to do in their lives. But then when you get with the girls that are especially from North America, they see the dream of like going to college and then getting your degree, and they know they have to work extremely hard. So I saw how hardworking everybody was, and I was like, wow, I better start working too because otherwise I'm not making it. And so then when I went to US for my boarding school, that's when I saw the actual process behind like the entire hardworking ethic because I came there and I saw girls just like hopping on a bike at 6 a.m. for fun, not because they had to, just because they wanted to and they wanted to get better. And I think that was one of the biggest jumps I had to make was just that mindset tweak of like, it's not because you have to work hard, it's because you want to work hard. And it's something incredible once you get into it, something totally not easy once you start. There have been a lot of rough mornings on a fan bike, a lot of rough morning skates where we were going line to line. But as soon as you get into that mindset, it's such a journey, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
I can tell you, as someone who has had to go to just literally just go to a practice at 8 a.m. and not have to do anything but just be at the practice, I can tell you that was exhausting. So I can only imagine how much worse it would be to have also been an hour in the gym or 2 hours in the gym before even hitting the ice. So yeah, that's perspective there. I appreciate that. Preston, what's up next?
Well, I actually have a follow-up real quick to this because, I have to say, like, your English is incredible. And
Thank you.
I'm curious, just like, not only are you dealing with these early morning practices and you're having to you completely switch your mindset competitively, but now you have an education that you have to worry about, right? I mean, I know for a fact you didn't, Dartmouth is a tough school to get into, right? So you clearly had to now make a switch mentally, not just physically, but academically as well. So what were the challenges that you had and what was that experience like?
So, as I said before, a lot of my time I got extremely lucky, especially at BK Select, because everybody there is just so supportive, and they understood that my English wasn't maybe the best in the beginning. No, maybe definitely wasn't the best, and I had to work up the courage and the confidence that I have in the language right now. So the first few months were a little rough. Like it was a lot of Google Translate, a lot of talking to teachers, trying to figure out what they're saying or what I'm even learning about. But I want to say that I got a hang of it after about a month, which I think is incredible because could have gone so much worse. And then it was just a smooth ride. In here in the US, it's more about you get out of it as much as you work for it. So if you work really hard in classes, the teachers will give you good grades and you will do good.
I can tell you, as someone who has been informally learning Czech over the last couple of years, and I've started to make a concerted effort now that I am the founder of this page. The fact that you were able to grasp the English language in such a short amount of time is commendable. So I'm very impressed. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Chris, over to
Uh,
you.
Yeah, so I want to know as well, as you were, as you think about where you're at right now and the journey that you've been through to this point, maybe who were some of those influences on you? Who were some of those role models? They can be obviously hockey related, they can be maybe family, but who were some of those people in your life, or maybe those, those posters on your wall as you were growing up, what have you, even now, that really inspired you, in spite of the obstacles that obviously as a female hockey player has in front of them, as you've mentioned, having to play with boys a lot of the time, or all the time growing up. Who were some of those people in your life that really inspired you, and continue to motivate you even now with the as you're in the NCAA?
So there's been so many people. I could probably write books of the names of the people that have gotten me to this point thus far. Doesn't matter if they had like a positive effect, or sometimes if even people can have a negative effect on you and pushes you in some way. But the major people I want to say is definitely my mom, obviously my dad too, but my mom is the one who had to get up in early in the mornings, drive us everywhere. She's been my biggest support. She's the one who texts me after every game. She always tells me the great things. She always makes me feel better. She's my rock. I love my mom. And then for some of the other ones, it's been essentially the coaches growing up, a lot of the coaches. So like my first grade coach, I was really young and he was one of the best coaches I've ever met. He's just very passionate about what he does. And so he got me into hockey. It's probably the reason why I love hockey so much because he made me so passionate about it. And I still see him till this day. He still tells the same story from a tournament we went to probably 16 years ago right now. He's definitely a big influence on my life. And then my brothers, obviously, they're the reason why I'm so competitive because two bigger brothers in one family, one house. You know how that goes. A lot of stick hockey, a lot of floor hockey, just like a grind, especially with them being taller, bigger, stronger. I just like to stand my ground. So that definitely they've been a great influence on me. And then honestly, all of my coaches that I've had in my career have had some sort of impact. Back home I have a goalie coach who's a retired MMA player. So he's been the biggest impact recently because I trained with him the entire summer, all of the breaks, and he's great. He always tells me what to improve on. Great practice list. Also, sometimes leave me without breath because he's big on skating. So, but it's good for me, you know. And I think that's about it. There's too many people to mention. There would have to be like a movie about it.
Perfect. I love that. I love that.
I think we all have those coaches that make such a huge impact on us, and I know from my perspective, I'm hoping that I can do the same for I know the young girls that I work with, and it's such a special thing to be able to go back to your coaches years later and say like, hey, I made it, or hey, this look how far I've come, and I can tell you that no one's outside of your family, no one's prouder than your coaches probably are. I'd like to, before we get into your current role as a goaltender at Dartmouth University, I want to really quickly circle to your experience with the national team. You've competed at a variety of different levels. You've found success at the U18 level, and then of course this past month you were in Switzerland for the Women's Euro Hockey Tour. You get the decision that you're starting your first ever national senior team national game. Um, can you explain a little bit about your path up the national team ranks, what it's been like, what it means to you, um, and what it was like to actually be told for the very first time that you're going to put on the national team sweater and represent your country?
So the national team holds a very, very special place in my heart. Obviously, there's no bigger honor you can have than represent your country and what you love. So the U16 years, those were the most fun events I've ever been to. We didn't get as much success as we wanted to, but just like we had so much fun, and then that translated to the 18s. Unfortunately, we never broke the curse of quarterfinals, but luckily they did that this year. So I was cheering them on. But the national team is just something incredible. I can't even describe the feeling of pride and so much respect for whenever I just put on the jersey and even if I'm just on the bench, it doesn't matter. Just like putting on the jersey is the biggest honor that I've ever had in my entire life, and it will always be one of my favorite memories. Definitely all the stars on the women's team because the U18s and U16s, when you're playing in them, it feels like it's the biggest thing in the world. But once you transfer to the women's, you're like, wow, wait, this is so much. This is even bigger than I thought it could be. So yeah, that's about it.
What were
That's
some, so having the opportunity to finally fulfill that dream of being able to play on the national team. Like, when you think back on those experiences, how have those experiences shaped you both as a player, but I think almost more importantly, as a person? Now that you finally have fulfilled those dreams, you've connected with all of these different people, who all each individually have different backgrounds. How has that impacted you?
Especially on the national team, is just like it's such a motivational factor for me because, like I said, no bigger honor. So especially with the people there, the coaches, the teammates, obviously we have a lot of fun, but it's such a motivational experience for me. The first time I put on the jersey in my U16 year, where I didn't even know if I was gonna be invited to any other events, I was like, this was one of the best times I've ever had in my entire life. I want to do this again. And that just kind of drove me to work even harder, both obviously on the hockey side, but then that translated into my life. So I worked hard both in just hockey, but then obviously school too. And it just helped me instill a mindset that I'll just get whatever I work for. And I think that was the biggest impact I could have gotten from the national team. And it doesn't matter if it applies to hockey, to life, school, just about anything.
Yeah, talk about the. Could you talk a little bit about as well? Obviously, having the opportunity to move up through the ranks, in terms of the various national teams, and the coaching staff, because I think that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we see that there's a coaching staff, but as fans, we only see them game day, right? We don't necessarily have the opportunity to see them behind the scenes, connecting with you, sharing their feedback, sharing their advice, maybe just asking you how you're doing. Like, maybe talk about, especially with the national team most recently, how the coaching staff has impacted you as well.
I'll repeat myself a lot. Extremely lucky to be on the coaching staff that there's right now because I know that in the past it might have not been all that ideal. Can't really speak on it. I didn't experience it. But the coaching staff right now, I think it's incredible. They give incredible feedback. Whatever you need from them, they will give you if they can. Especially with our goalie coach, Pavel. We're in contact a lot throughout the year. He gives me tips, not just like on the national team, but also off the national team. And I just think that they instill a lot of confidence in our team because they're the first, from what I heard, they're like the first staff that's like really believes in our team and the success we can have. And I think that's been the biggest thing and like the biggest turnaround. And that's why in the recent, I want to say 4 years or so, we had so much success because there's just this confidence and this belief that we know we can do it. It's just about executing.
Is there any single piece of advice that you've been given, either from your coaching staff or from the players that you've had the opportunity to suit up next to, that has really resonated with you over the last couple of years since, working your way up on the national side?
On the national side, there's been so much advice thrown at me because obviously the older players always want to help, so they've given me a lot of advice. And I'm gonna say like the most obvious one is just enjoy it, just have fun, because in the end, you only get so many years of hockey, you only get so many opportunities on the national team, so you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think it might be a good opportunity for us to start asking Michaela about how on earth Dartmouth University came into the equation. I would love to hear from Michaela. How did Dartmouth, how did that conversation come about when you were at Bishop Kearney? What was the process like for going and applying? And then when you got in, I'm assuming you got the chance to tell your family, hey, I'm going to be going to NCAA Division One. I'm going to be playing the dream that I've always wanted. But not only that, it's at an Ivy League school. It's at one of the most academically challenging schools in the United States. I'm sure that was a great surprise for you.
Oh, you just describing that made me smile because it's truly an incredible opportunity. So at BK, usually the main goal is to get the players committed to play NCAA hockey. Sometimes it's D1, sometimes it's D3. Doesn't matter. It's about finding the right fit. And so after my sophomore year, which luckily the Worlds were in Wisconsin, which I think helped a lot to my recruiting process because a lot of scouts were there, a lot of teams came to watch. I saw the people around with the Dartmouth jackets, but at the time I had no idea who they were, just knew about the school. And so by the time, I think it's called June 15th, by the time June 15th around, Dartmouth did reach out. And obviously a couple of other schools reached out, but what really stood out to me was how much they wanted me. Because sometimes you get schools and they're like, yeah, you're the third goalie on our list. I'm like, if I'm the third goalie on your list, you don't see me as playing, and I want to play. I'm not going there to just get really smart. So I just saw that in Dartmouth, and I saw how many opportunities I could gain potentially by going here. And the Ivy League school part to me was the most mind blowing thing because my coach asked me for a list of schools, and I didn't really know what Ivy League meant that much. So I put a couple of Ivy League schools up there, and my coach is like, "So you want to go Ivy League?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't really think about it that much at the time. I was just like, I kind of just like the school. I think they have a good hockey program." And so that expanded my horizons, and that's how I got to Dartmouth. And I went on my visit. I absolutely fell in love with the place. Like if you ever see the campus photos, I don't know how anyone could not fall in love with that. And so then the application process also obviously tough, but made it luckily. But me personally, I never thought I would pick myself to go to a school that's academically this challenging because I was never a big fan of school back home. I kind of started liking school once I made the transition to the US. So this was definitely an experience, and I never thought I would end up here, but here we are, and I'm extremely glad I am here.
And we will be right back. This episode is sponsored by sports nutritionist Melissa Buffunos of MB Performance Nutrition. As a former competitive hockey player turned nutritionist, Melissa's mission is to help the next generation of hockey players optimize their diets and health so they can perform their best both on and off the ice. Ready to dominate on the ice? Melissa's new course, The Hockey Nutrition Blueprint, is available now. If you're serious about learning how nutrition can impact performance and building actionable nutrition strategies based on your unique needs as an elite hockey player, learn more and sign up at melissabuffunos.com/course. That's melissabuffunos.com/course, and make sure to use code Rinkside to save $50 off the regular price. Thank you to Melissa Buffunos for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to the show. So maybe, if you don't mind, maybe talking a little bit more, I think, especially for a lot of now, like with a lot of women as they're looking at what that next step might be for them, applying to universities, applying to colleges, do they go overseas? Do they, choose NCAA, or here in Canada, do they choose U Sports? Like, there's a lot of different options for them. Maybe I think this is a unique opportunity for us to be able to talk to someone who didn't start out in Canada or the US and went through this process. Maybe what are some of the pieces of advice that you might have for how an athlete may want to approach? Obviously, it's specific to each individual, so things are going to be different, but maybe some broad themes that you might want to look at, in terms of what that next step for you might look like. What advice might you have for those athletes?
So, like you mentioned, it's very specific to the person, but what I think can never hurt is obviously like trying to make the youth national hockey teams, because those are the events that get scouted the most for, like, if you want to go to the NCAA or U Sports. And then the steps you take, like, I feel like purely dependent on what you want to get. You can take a lot of people are going to Sweden now, or like the European leagues, before they go to college. And I think it just depends on obviously the financial aspect of it all too. Because if you go in Europe, it's a little cheaper. And if you're trying, well, not a little, it's cheaper than if you try and go to a prep school in the US or Canada. And so I think it just truly depends on what people want. If you want to go to the NCAA, you don't need to. But if you make the national team, there's more visibility for you, because if you're just in a Czech league somewhere, it's hard for school to recruit you. So either that or just go to Sweden, go to Finland, try some different hockey, and maybe like email a couple of schools if that's what you want to do. And that's the best way to get noticed, I think.
Nice, fantastic. And Preston, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, so let's see, we're almost in December. You're a couple of months now into your first semester in college. Have you noticed a difference in your previous experiences, both academically and from a hockey perspective, just in the terms of like the level of competitiveness, just in these first couple of months alone? I mean, I can only imagine between the facilities and the coaching staff and the resources that you have at your disposal, an NCAA Division I program offers a lot of great, fantastic aspects to it. So what have the first few months been like? How has the adjustment been to your first semester? And what strategies have you kind of found effective in managing everything so far?
I gotta say, sometimes I was just thinking about this today. Sometimes it still feels surreal. Sometimes it feels like it's not real yet. It hasn't set in yet, really, even though I've been here for 3 months, which is kind of crazy. But the adjustments, obviously, a stepping stone, another stepping stone in my life, obviously was tough. But I think that what has really helped me is, like you were talking about the facilities, there's a person just for just about anything I need. I go to a mental performance guy that we have, Steven Gonzo. He's great. He helps me with like my neurocognitive training. There's people that can help you with your school, time management, just about anything you need. So they really try to help out, especially the athletes, because we have a little bit of a different schedule. There's people that try to make this experience as easy for you as possible. Obviously, an Ivy League school and just a college in general, a lot of homework, a lot of classes missed, unfortunately. But it's all manageable because of all these resources that we have, and which I'm incredibly grateful for. Because otherwise, there would be much of a tougher road than it is right now. And especially from hockey standpoint, the facilities we have here are incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Our weight room just might be my favorite place to spend time. It's the nicest thing you've ever seen. It's just so big and so nice.
That's awesome. I've had the pleasure of coaching in that in your home arena. My fun fact, Dartmouth connection is my university where I graduated from in Norwich started across the river from Dartmouth, and they were rival schools once upon a time, very long time ago. So I've gotten a chance to visit. It is a beautiful place, and you're so lucky, and I really hope it's going to be the most incredible couple years for you. From the hockey side, you know, you've had the opportunity to play a couple of games. I cannot tell you how I'm trying to paint a picture for you that my wife and I are sitting on the couch and I'm like yelling at her like, we've got to turn on the Dartmouth Quinnipiac game because Quinnipiac's ranked number 7 and we've got a Czech goalie in the net. And you know, so it's a fun exercise for me every weekend, you know, getting an opportunity to see like where are all the Czech players playing, who can I follow, who can I watch. I know it didn't end up the way we wanted it to in that game, but I mean that was a phenomenal performance from you and instantly, right? First couple of games and you're already being thrown into one of the best teams in the country. And you're playing against them. So how have the first couple of games gone? You know, what's the feeling like on your end?
The first couple of games, obviously, like I said before, an adjustment. I think my first game at Penn State couldn't have gone any better. I think that's a reason. That's one of the reasons why I have some confidence at this level. Not quite enough confidence as I would like, but I'll get there. That's why I have some confidence because I just did much better than I expected that first game, and then I've just been trying to build on that ever since. And the first few games, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get our first win, which is a bummer. But we've had a lot of games that are 1 goal game. It's just about lucky bounces, and it just goes in for them and doesn't go for us. And I think that if we just keep to our structure and just keep doing what we're doing, we're gonna like at the end of the year we'll be fine. And I think we would be able to say that we're proud of ourselves. So I think you just need to reflect on the past couple of games that maybe okay I play well in, but about just keep on building and making sure that we progress in the way that we want.
How has your time at Dartmouth like kind of changed or maybe evolved your mentality when it comes to not obviously just like obviously hockey, just like any sport, it's about wins and losses. It is a results driven business. But for you personally as well, like how has your time in Dartmouth really changed and helped your mentality evolve and change and grow throughout your experiences thus far?
So as a first year, it was definitely I definitely got thrown into the fire a little bit, but that was what I was expecting. That was what I asked for. I wanted to do this. I wanted to start right from the start. So I'm very grateful for that. And the mentality behind it, I had to become a little more resilient. Because from some of my teammates that have known me in the past, they know I have a little bit of as every goalie does, a little bit of anger issues, which I had to just eliminate because that's just not what you do in college. That's not what you should be doing at any level. So there's been a big shift in that. I had to become much more patient and composed, especially in games where I have 2,000 students pounding on my glass that are just rooting against me. And it's definitely a great experience, I think, and it has definitely helped me as a goaltender because I've never had, like, especially at Penn State, I've never had a student section like yelling behind me when I got scored on and telling me that's all my fault. Like that's a once in a lifetime experience. I had to smirk at that a little bit because I was like, oh, how lucky am I to be here and to get yelled at, and for everybody else to wish that they could score on me. And it's just an incredible feeling. I can't really describe it. Some games are better than others, obviously, but it's just about keeping composure and being patient and just like doing the best I can with what I have where I am. And that's, I think, the biggest piece of advice I've been given thus far here. And that's just how I try to play every game.
I love that that you were like, you know what, I just laughed it off. There's 2,000 people screaming at me saying I suck, but it's fine. It's fine, you know, and just being able to shrug that off like it's nothing is just I think that's a testament to your mentality. Maybe it's the goalie mentality, maybe it is also your mentality as well. But I know if I had that happening to me, I don't know that I would be able to make the next save. So I think that's a testament to, especially as you've gone through your NCAA career as it's been thus far. It shows the growth you've been through, like we've kind of established. So that's kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, Preston. You're up
You're
next.
you're certainly a goalie, Michaela. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Um, well, I mean, I'm hoping that, we'll have an opportunity to chat as your career at Dartmouth progresses over the next couple of years. And I know I, for one, look forward to continuing to follow your progress there and hopefully catch a couple more games this year. But I'm curious, you've gotten this far, right? Are you looking ahead? Are you already starting to think in the back of your mind, like what are my goals? What do I want to accomplish next? And what is kind of the long-term future for me hockey wise? Is that already something that's kind of creeping into the back of your head already, or are you like strictly only focused on the here and now?
I feel like it wouldn't even be human if I wasn't thinking about the future at least a little bit, you know? So
Yeah.
obviously it's been in my mind. It depends. It truly depends. There's a couple of goals that I have in mind, like trying to make the national team for the first ever worlds back at home. That would be a huge thing. Or the Olympics that are in 2 years. Those are both two big things coming up that I would love to compete for, and we'll see how that goes. Can let you know in 2 years. But other than that, I just want to help Dartmouth as much as possible. I want to keep building our team, and I want to keep putting our team in the spot where we can win games, hopefully very, very soon. And that's just about it. As of right now here, I'm focused more on the NCAA and my team and how we're doing and who we're playing. But in the big scheme of things, it's definitely those big national team events that are coming up soon ish.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the upcoming 2025 Women's Worlds, which will be in Czech, I believe it's in Czechia. It's the first time Czech Republic has ever hosted the top division worlds. I've talked to a couple of players and staff, and they're all just so excited. What does it mean to know that, you know, the best players in the world are going to be converging on Southern Bohemia for a couple of weeks? I mean, I'm sure it's an eye-opening, like just such an exciting time for the national program just in general right now.
I think it's just I think it's just a result of how we've been like how the national team has been doing in the past couple of years. Because obviously we've put ourselves up on the map a little bit. Well, not me especially, but like just the national team itself put ourselves on the map with the bronze medals and the fourth places, and we've been creeping up on the top, trying to crawl up to them. So I think it's just a testament to the hard work that's been done with the national team in the past couple of years. And luckily, it's obviously a privilege to have it in the Czech Republic for the very first time. It shows the growth of like girls and women's hockey in Czech that we're trying to promote right now.
No,
I
that's
think
awesome.
I would be remiss if as you know, an Ottawa, Ontario resident here. Obviously, there's a connection between Czechia and Carla McLeod, the head coach of now what's known as the Ottawa Charge. I kind of want to know, you know, obviously, and there are a number of Ottawa Charge on the team as well. But I just kind of wanted to know, like, from your perspective, what kind of impact you've mentioned a few times now, the growth of women's hockey, especially in Czechia, which is long overdue and incredibly exciting to see. You know, maybe what kind of impact do you think a coach like Carla McLeod and her communication style and all those sorts of things and having those players like Mrazova, Tejralova, Vanisova on the team as well, who play in the PWHL, who are obviously contributing to Czechia, what that means for, you know, the growth of the growth of women's hockey in Czechia. It's got to be super exciting, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As you said, Mrazova, Tyrolova, they're both great. They're both great role models, especially on the national teams. The national team is very, very lucky to have them. They're great leaders, and they're also one of the people that have been in North America for a while now. So they went through the PHF and the NWHL, all the leagues that like somehow failed to satisfy like the women's professional hockey league. And I'm just so glad that now they get to be in the PWHL because they're incredible hockey players, incredible people, and they just keep promoting the game, not just in the PWHL but on the national team as well. Aneta Tero, she works with like a lot of camps back home with like little kids that are made through the Czech hockey organization, and they just want to make sure that the future is better than what they had, which I think is incredible.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you're the second player I've talked to now that has said that when they were growing up, it's like they didn't even realize that there was even opportunities for the girls' game. And I think big events like this and having the opportunity to host it is going to put such a spotlight on just how far the program has come. And I think the future is so bright. And it's part of the reason why I'm just so excited to help cover it and promote those stories. So you know, we'll be crossing our fingers for you, and I know that that's what you're going to be working for the next couple of months. So, um, you know, I do have you know, really one last question for me, Michaela, and that is, you know, thinking back 10 years to, you know, 9-year-old Michaela Hesová, you know, what are you saying to yourself? You know, what are you saying to your past self, your younger self? To see how far you've come up to this point and to see and to think about you when you were falling in love with the game for the first time and really learning that, you know, you wanted to be a goaltender. What would you say to yourself if you could go back in time and say one thing?
If I could say one thing, I would say stick with it and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the people you're with. Enjoy the places you're at, because I got to travel around most of Czech Republic for all my tournaments, and I was always like, oh, it's a 4-hour car ride. No, I should have looked at it in a way where it's like it's another adventure, it's another exciting tournament. Honestly, the fun of it will never go away, but it's a different type of fun at every level. So that's what I would just tell myself: just enjoy it and just stick to the hard work you're doing, and you'll see that it will pay off.
Oh, and this is a fantastic transition. So thank you, Preston, for setting this up, because this has become a tradition on this show. Is like a fun kind of like, I call it, and it's a working title, but 20 questions, but not 20 questions segment of the show. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but it is a scientifically proven test to truly get to know the one and only Michaela Hesová. So I hope that you're ready to take this test. Are you ready?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. Yeah. Great. Another test that you have to take, right? I want to know, let's start things off with, what are you most proud of from this past season?
From this past season, I'm most proud of how our team has reacted to each every one of the games. We have, instead of maybe some people might think that losses pull us apart, but no, they bring us together and they make us an even better team than we could ever imagine. I'm super proud of that.
Oh, good answer. And this is the thing, is that I always love, because it's that thing about hockey. It's never about you as an individual. It's always about the team, and I love that. I respect that. I'm gonna say off season, even though there isn't really ever truly an off season for any athlete, especially hockey. But what does the off season typically look like for you, and how do you think it's changed over the years, especially now that you're now in the NCAA?
So it has definitely changed. When I was younger and in Czech Republic, the off season was always with the team. We would all do the same thing. We would all run a crazy amount. Definitely some trauma from that. There was a lot of running, a lot of pain there. But nowadays it's more about the individual part. A lot of goalie worlds, a lot of early mornings, a lot of lifting, sprinting, biking, which has definitely not been as much in the past. And now it's more individualized to me and to what I need as a goalie, especially. So I think that's been the biggest change, just like making it a little more goalie specific rather than me running around with a bunch of forwards and D and trying to get to their level. And I'm not a biggest fan of running, if you can't tell. I run 10 yards and that's it.
In all fairness, I don't like running either, so that's totally fine. I get that. I'm gonna limit the number of follow-up questions that I'll ask, but I do want to ask as well, especially as a goalie, because we on the show we don't have the opportunity to speak to or speak with many goalies, and I want to know, for you, what is your go-to pregame meal?
Wow. Wow. Go-to pregame meal. I want to say, especially in the US, is definitely some type of pasta, like spaghetti, maybe some penne, depends on the day, marinara sauce, some chicken, and then some fruit or some veggies, depends on what's available. But I think that's like a go-to, or like a sandwich. But I think the pasta is a little better than just a plain sandwich, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I love myself some carbs, so I feel you on that one. Okay, so during the season, who's owned the dressing room music, and what's been played most often?
So we have a couple of people switch it off. Obviously, our captain, Lauren Messier, she's on the aux quite a lot, and it's all kinds of music you could take. It's like you could give, it's like your regular pop, rap, country a lot lately. And it doesn't really depend on like who has the aux, because everybody plays just all sorts of music. There's some techno in there as well, some big booty mixes. You never know what's gonna come up on the aux next.
Okay, well, now I have to ask for you specifically, speaking of music, if you could pick only one song to play for the rest of your life, what song would it be? With the caveat being, you don't have to play it all the time, but if you're like, yeah, I'm looking for a banger right now, I'm looking for something to listen to, it has to be this song.
Well, one music for the rest of my life. That's a lot of pressure.
I know, no
No, I
pressure,
want.
no pressure. That's why I'm always glad to be on
uh,
this side of the question.
no, I bet. I want to say I would probably say "Pursuit of Happiness," both the regular version and the remix version. That song gets me either going for a hockey game, or it's just good to like study to. So I'm big fan of that song.
That's fantastic. And Preston, before we wrap up, I want to throw it to you. Do you have any last questions? Maybe some random questions for Michaela as well.
I will ask one last one, and it is one of the questions that we kind of have thought about here. But it's what is something that the audience or Dartmouth fans or whoever might not know about you? I mean, we all know that you're hockey, 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 but what is life outside of hockey for Michaela Hesová?
Life outside of hockey for me is probably what some people, well, most people probably don't know, is that I actually do like to read. It just has to be like very specific kinds of books. Because anytime somebody asks me, I'm like, not that all about reading, but I do like to read, but it has to be very specific books. I don't think many people know that.
We didn't ask, and now that I think about it, I would like to ask too, what is your major and what are you studying at Dartmouth?
So at liberal arts schools, we don't have to declare a major until I think the beginning of my junior year. So as of right now, I'm technically undeclared, but what I'm planning to major in is psychology. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Very cool.
All
You're gonna
right.
become the next goalie mind professional, huh?
Oh, hopefully, we'll see.
I love it.
I love that. And Michaela, we can't thank you enough for taking the time. Obviously, as an athlete, like we've established, there's never really an off season. There's obviously a ton of things going on as well now that you're into the season as well. But we can't appreciate your time enough. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. Time flew by. It's crazy.
Oh,
Time flew
yeah.
by. But thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And there you have it, folks, for Michaela Hesová and Preston Huntington, the one and only. I'm Chris Sinclair, and this has been Rinkside Rundown. Cheers.